Family members testifying Capitol Hill today. We're also learning a lot more about the Uvalde Police Department's response to the Robb Elementary shooting. The investigation continues into what really happened that fatal day and who should have and could have done a better job at what they were supposed to do, and that was protect and serve no matter what the cost. Former San Bernardino Police Chief Jarrod Burguan and also former NYPD Chief of Detectives Robert Boyce join me now. Bob, you know, today the Justice Department is actually outlining plans to review the police response there in Uvalde. Here's what Attorney General Merrick Garland had said.
Our hearts are broken by what happened in Uvalde. There is nothing that we can do that can undo the pain borne both by the survivors, families of the victims, and the community and the country. But the independence and transparency and expertise of the Justice Department can go a long way toward assessing what happened in Uvalde with respect to the law enforcement response and to giving guidance for the future. And that's what we're here for today. The Justice Department is undertaking a critical incident review of the law enforcement response that day at the request of the Uvalde mayor. The review will be comprehensive, it will be transparent, and it will be independent. We will be assessing what happened that day.
Clearly, Bob, an investigation of this magnitude is necessary.
Yes, it's very appropriate and should happen. I think they should wait until the end of the Texas Rangers investigation. Hopefully that ends soon. But initially, you can see the fault lines already. Why is Chief Arendano, was he incident commander? He was in charge of 6 people and only was there for 2 years. Why didn't someone take over from him initially when they were fired upon? There you have an active shooter, you have to go in. Because there's a cessation of shots doesn't mean you shouldn't go in. The fact of the matter, those kids need help, the ones who are shot. They need immediate aid. So this was a failure that I can see right now. It doesn't happen often, but when it does happen, it's even only magnifies the tragedy here. So we had this in Parkland, but these things, these protocols are all over the country, and they're usually carried out with immediacy. It wasn't here.
So, Jarrod, if you were in charge of this investigation, if this were a department that you had to dig deeper into, where do you even begin with regard to what went wrong and who didn't do their job properly?
Well, I think we have to start with what do we know about the actions of the suspect and what do we know about the officers that responded and what they knew and what their decision-making process was into what they chose to do or not to do in this case. And that's going to tell a big part of the story as to what their mindset was. You also need to dig into the training and find out exactly what training they had, and did they respond to that training, or was there an utter failure in a response to that training? And I think we know that there was a failure here. From an industry-wide perspective, we need to learn to know why. I've often said that these incidents are very much defined by the training that you provide for your officers and the decisions that are made by the very first people that arrive on scene. And we've seen incidents as tragic as they are with a successful perception, at least, of the response. And then in cases like this and in Parkland and many others where they did not respond to training, and those were viewed as a failure in terms of a response.
So, Jarrod, let me follow up with you on that then. Uvalde police say that they paused and waited because they believed the shooter was barricaded and that it was no longer an active shooter event. But how would they determine that without putting eyes on him?
Yeah, that's a tough thing. So in the active shooter protocol, we do talk about when does something transition from an active shooter to a barricaded, because there is, in some cases, something of a transition. But I think all of the experts in this arena and all the people that do the training will agree that if you know that you have victims in the room, if you know that you have wounded people, and they knew that because of the phone calls that they had received, when you have those circumstances, that's not a barricaded suspect. That is still an active situation that has to be dealt with. And you don't have the luxury of hoping that you can negotiate at that point. You have a suspect that has already proven that he's going to do harm, and he has done harm, and he has to be stopped.
And Bob, let me ask you, and Jarrod, you might want to weigh in on this as well. But Bob, in February of 2022, DOJ actually did this study that showed, and it provided no evidence that the police presence in schools actually makes a difference in improving safety outcomes. So why is this option even being suggested? Bob, I'd love your thoughts, and then Jarrod too, please.
Sure. So I would disagree with that from what my experience and 35 years in law enforcement, and also was in charge of precincts where I had high schools that we had a lot of problems with. The police presence is necessary, especially at the breaks in the beginning of school. You know, to show that there's order here and chaos. Show that, you know, young people are young people. I disagree with it. I think we do so much better technology-wise, interlocking doors and cameras and things, and panic buttons, things like that. That should all be put into the resolve of the problem as well. But right away, I don't think it's a negative that police officers at school. I think in some schools it's really important. I don't think it damages the children at all. The incidents like this, everybody's talking about it across the nation, as they should. That's more damaging than anything else.
Jarrod, before you respond, I have a note here also. The Department of Education did some research as well, and it found that having more police in schools actually criminalized normal teenage behaviors, specifically of Black and brown students. So weigh in. What do you think? Police presence, good or bad thing?
I think that is the entire debate on school resource officers or school safety officers. On one hand, you have the safety component and the fact that an armed officer on that campus has the capacity at least to protect that student body. And on the other hand, you do have the notion that it does, in some cases, has created a school to prison pipeline, as it's been called. Here's what I do know. In a large study, when you look at this whole country, there are a ton of schools, and these incidents are relatively rare in comparison to the overall number. It doesn't surprise me that DOJ came out with a finding like that. But this is what we do know. A good school resource officer that has good relationships with students, is trusted by the students, becomes a conduit of information. Students feel comfortable sharing with the school resource officer that they are concerned about another suspect, or another student, I should say, something that they saw, a gun in a bag, somebody that made a comment, and a good school resource officer has the ability to intervene in those particular senses. And those things happen every day in this country to little fanfare and little news. So we know that there is a successful component. And good school resource officers are able to build that relationship without creating a prison pipeline.
Jarrod and Bob, always great to talk to you. Thanks, guys, so much.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.